What is going on, everybody? MLB The Show 21 has finally dropped, and that means it is time to get things going here on the channel. I have a lot of big things planned for this MLB The Show 21 cycle, so if you are excited, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you're new so you don't miss out on any of the content. So obviously the main series here will be the franchise series, and I plan on adding a lot of new things that I've never done in the past in this franchise series. The main things will be including our highlights for drafted players. I plan on having a really big draft video, international free agency, and the international free agents will be made by you guys in my Discord server. So if you want to make a player, make sure to join the Discord. The link is in the description. And I have a lot of other big things planned out that you will see in due time. So the team we're going to be using is the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles are the worst ranked team in the game, and this is going to be a challenging rebuild. That's why I picked them. Some housekeeping stuff before we start. I just want to point out that the base rosters are not great. The ratings for the major league players are what they are, but the problem I have is with a lot of the minor league stuff. So, for example, none of the 2020 draft picks are in here. So, the Orioles used the second overall pick on Helston Kjerstad. He is not in there. So, I will be looking for rosters today in the roster vault, and I'm going to try to download something better for once we actually start getting into the nitty-gritty of the series. Today is just an introduction episode, so it's not a big deal that the roster isn't perfect, but hopefully there's going to be something on the vault that I find today that has all of the minor league stuff correct. So that is that. Obviously, as I just said, this will be an introductory video, so we're not really going to go into games yet. Rather, we're just going to be introducing the series and the team. This franchise will be realistic. Obviously, we're going to make moves here and there, but I don't plan on trading away all of our bad contracts and all of our old players for really good prospects or really good major leaguers here in the first episode. No, this is a realistic series, and we're not necessarily trying to win a World Series with this team in year one. This is also not a one-off rebuild episode. This is a long franchise with a bunch of episodes throughout these next few months. So let's get things started. One of my favorite new features in MLB The Show 21 is this new depth chart feature. And what I really like about it is it projects all the way to 2025. So it kind of projects our depth chart. Now, obviously, that won't take into account the moves we're going to make. This is probably not what our depth chart is going to look like at all in 2025. But I do really like it because it projects the ratings of a lot of our young players, which I find very useful. So let's take a look at the roster here, starting with the pitching staff. The ace of this team is John Means. Means is only a 75 overall. Most aces are not 75 overall players, but the Orioles just don't have anyone better. John Means was an all-star in 2019 because every team needs an all-star. In 2020 and 10 starts, his ERA was not great, but he did have a whip below 1, and his career whip is just over 1.10. So John Means is a very interesting player for us at 27. Is he a long-term piece of our future? I don't know, but he is the best pitcher we have currently. Our top pitching prospects include Grayson Rodriguez, a 20-year-old righty. He's a 69 overall with B potential, and that's a very high B. That's probably like an 88 or an 89. So Grayson Rodriguez is definitely going to be a big piece of our future. And the other elite pitching prospect we have is D.L. Hall. 21 years old, 65 overall with A potential. He is really, really good. Rodriguez and Hall are probably going to make a fairly early impact. I don't think either of them are going to be called up this season, but possibly next year because our pitching staff really just isn't very good. I mean, our second highest rated starter at the moment is Matt Harvey. That would be nice if we were in 2013, but unfortunately, we are no longer in 2013. The other starters in the day one rotation will be Jorge Lopez, Dean Kremer, and Bruce Zimmerman. Those are the current starters for the Orioles. I know it says Keegan Aiken is in the majors and Zimmerman is in AAA, but I ended up switching that. I don't necessarily want to do exactly what the Orioles are doing in real life, but I figured for the start I would have the same rotation that they have currently. Outside of Means, I think the only starter who's currently in our major league rotation who I could consider building around long-term is Jorge Lopez. Probably not. He is already 27 years old, but there's just not a lot in our rotation throughout our organization. The bullpen is not much better. The closer will be 36-year-old Cesar Valdez, who is our highest-rated reliever, but at 36 years old, he's not going to be a building block. There are a few decent players in the bullpen who are fairly young and have B potential. Paul Fry, Tanner Scott, Travis Larkin Sr., Dylan Tate. I mean, none of these guys are all that special, but if one or two of them can be really good for us and be a long-term piece in our bullpen, I think that'd be nice. But the most interesting reliever we have in our organization is Hunter Harvey. Harvey was a high draft pick a few years back. He hasn't really developed, but I do think we can turn him into a good player. He's 26 years old, but he's only a 57 overall. In 17 Major League games, he has not been terrible. He has a career ERA of 3 and a whip of 1.13. So I think we could develop him into a long-term reliever. I don't know if he'll ever be great, but he's better than everything else we have in the bullpen. And with that A potential, I think there's a chance he could develop. The starting catcher on the Major League roster is Pedro Severino. He's okay. He's not terrible, but he is more of a placeholder because he will not be the long-term starter. The long-term guy at catcher, of course, will be the top prospect in this organization. One of the top prospects in baseball, former #1 overall draft pick, Adley Rutschman. Rutschman is a 70 overall, so he could be called up as early as July or August of this season. He's a very well-rounded player. He's good defensively. He also has a very solid bat, and I think he could develop into one of the best catchers in the Major League. So certainly a guy we will be building around long-term. I believe he has 98 potential, which is really good. There's also Chance Sisco, another former top prospect who hasn't really developed. He also has A potential. But we do have Adley Rutschman, so Sisco probably won't be the long-term starter for us. But as the backup catcher currently, he'll get to play in the majors. And if he does well, maybe he could be trade bait. There are a lot of interesting players here at first base, including arguably the best player on the team currently in Trey Mancini. Mancini can also play all the outfield spots. That's probably where he's going to line up for us this season. Mancini is a very inspiring story. His Major League career got off to a really good start, and in 2019, he had an OPS just below 900. He had 35 home runs. He was really, really good. But during spring training of 2020, it was discovered he had colon cancer. He did not play at all last season, and luckily he is now cancer-free, and he is now back with the Orioles. So I would love to build around him, but he is already 29 years old. He only has C potential. I'm definitely going to try to keep him long-term, but I don't know if we will be successful. So hopefully Trey Mancini will be a long-term building block, but that is certainly something that's to be determined. Someone who I'm sure we will be able to build around is 24-year-old Ryan Mountcastle. Mountcastle just finished up his rookie season last year. He hit .333 with an OPS a little bit below 900. Mountcastle is probably the major leaguer on our roster who has the most long-term upside, and I think he could be a really fun player for us going forward. He's a really good contact bat, developing power-wise. He can also play a number of different positions. He can play first, third, shortstop, and left. So even though him and Trey Mancini are both listed as first basemen, I do believe they could be able to coexist since they are both very versatile. There's also Chris Davis, who is very interesting. Davis was once one of the best hitters in baseball. He won an MVP award back in 2013, but ever since then, it has completely crashed and burned. The only thing that is not crashed and burned about Chris Davis is his bank account, because he got paid by the Orioles. He is still on a very big contract. He has 2 more years left, making $23 million in both of them. Now, we could always trade him away, so we don't have to worry about the financial issue with him, but that's not realistic. Nobody would take on this contract, so we will be keeping Davis for the next 2 years. I don't know if it's going to be with him in the majors or the minors, but he's going to be with our organization for 2 years, and after the 2022 season, he will finally be off the books, which is very refreshing. There are a lot of interesting, versatile second basemen on this roster. Yolmer Sanchez, Ramon Urias, Jahmai Jones, Pat Valaika. Of that group, the most interesting one to me is Jones. He's only 23 years old. He's a very well-rounded young player, and I think he could make an early impact for our Major League team. Outside of Mountcastle, Jones is probably the next best long-term piece who's already in the majors. He played 3 games last year for the Angels, so very small sample size. This is pretty much his rookie year, and I'm excited to see what he does for us. I do plan on building around him long-term, considering he's young and quite good. There's also a potential prospect, Wilbus Santiago. I wasn't familiar with him, so I did a Google search, and he is a real prospect in the Orioles organization, but he is not ranked in the top 30 prospects according to MLB.com, so he should not have a potential. Again, I'm looking for better rosters where the minor leagues are more accurate. At third base, there's not a whole lot here. We do have two solid major leaguers in Maikel Franco and Rio Ruiz. I'm not sure if we're going to be building around either of them long term. Maybe Ruiz if he develops a little bit more contact against righties. Shortstop, Freddie Galvis, 31 years old. He's a fine placeholder, but not a long-term guy. We do have a lot of good prospects at shortstop. There's Adam Hall, who's only 20 years old, 68 overall with B potential. Taron Vavra, 22 years old, 67 overall with A potential, and he has a nice head of hair, which goes for a bonus. Vavra's a little bit raw. He is a good glove. He's fast, but he does need to develop his bat. He'll probably be in the minors for a year or two, but there is a chance he could be our long-term shortstop. If Vavra doesn't really develop, however, we do have a good backup plan in 18-year-old Gunnar Henderson. Henderson is also a very raw player, considering he is just a teenager, but I am confident that the long-term shortstop of the future is on the roster, whether that's Vavra, Henderson, Hall, or possibly Malquin Caneo, even though I probably wouldn't bet on that because he's only a 62 overall at 26 years old. Looking at the outfield now, there are some interesting pieces. Austin Hayes is only 25 years old, 76 overall with B potential. He's a fairly good young player. We could look to build around him. Kyle Stowers is one of the better prospects in this organization, 65 overall, 22 years old. There's also Hudson Haskins, who is not in this roster. I believe he was the Orioles' second-round pick last year because, again, none of the 2020 guys are here. But Hudson Haskins, he's a good prospect. And Cedric Mullins, I do like him quite a bit. He's 26 years old, only a 62 overall, which I think is quite disrespectful. I'm not sure if he's going to be a long-term piece of our future, but I do like him a lot, at least for the immediate future. And then at right field, the highest rated player on the team currently, 77 overall, Anthony Santander. Santander is 26 years old. He's a really good hitter. Can hit for contact, he can hit for power, he's a switch hitter as well, and he's a pretty solid glove too. Last year he had a very solid season, hitting 11 home runs in only 37 games. He only struck out 25 times in 153 at-bats, 261 average, 890 OPS. He's just a really well-rounded player. I'm not sure if he's going to be a long-term starter for us, but at only 26 years old, I do think we could develop him. DJ Stewart is a fine power bat off the bench. He was once a really good prospect. I don't think he's a long-term starter for us, but he's a fine player. Yusniel Diaz, one of the main acquisitions from the Manny Machado trade a few years back. He's only 23 years old. He only has C potential, but maybe we could develop him. And then one of the most underrated prospects in the organization, 21-year-old Christopher Cespedes. He's only a 57 overall, so he's not very good. He's really, really raw. But I do think he has some long-term potential. He's probably at least 2 or 3 years away. But I do think we could develop him to maybe being a starting caliber outfielder. Also, we cannot forget about Heston Kjerstad. He will be in the updated roster that I find in the vault, hopefully today. So that will conclude our roster evaluation. This team is not great year one, considering they're the worst ranked team in the game. But there are some good players in the majors and the minors who I believe we can develop as fun pieces for the future. Let's take a look at the lineups and rotations here for the start of season number 1. Now, of course, the lineups and rotations will change throughout the year as we make moves and as players play better than expected or worse than expected. But this is what I'm going with for now. Let me know what you think of it in the comments section below. We will be platooning a few players in and out against righties and lefties, and we do have some guys who will be playing every day, of course. The pitching rotation will be Means, Harvey, Kremer, Zimmerman, and Jorge Lopez. And then the bullpen, I'm going to have Hunter Harvey as the long reliever because he is the most stamina out of any of our relievers. And as I said earlier, Cesar Valdez will be our closer for the start. So that will pretty much conclude this first episode. Again, if you are excited here for the Baltimore Orioles franchise here on MLB The Show 21, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe because I think this series is going to be a ton of fun. If you enjoyed my Pirate series that I had last year, then I think this one's going to be even better. So make sure to stay tuned. Next episode, we will kick off this season. Hopefully that will be uploaded tomorrow based on when I find a good roster. We'll be doing opening day and then playing another game early in the season. I also plan on playing multiple minor league games throughout the season as well. So we're going to have a lot of fun in this series, and I think you guys are all really going to enjoy it. That will do it. Make sure to like and again subscribe if you are new, and as always, have a good one. I'm out. Peace.